Greetings, seekers of truth and spiritual understanding. What if everything you've been experiencing lately, the strange synchronicities, the heightened intuition, the sense that time itself is behaving differently, isn't random at all? What if these are actually the first tangible signs that you're beginning to perceive reality through an entirely new dimensional lens? Right now, as we speak, a massive vibrational shift is occurring across our collective consciousness, a transition so profound that those who remain unaware will find themselves increasingly disoriented as their familiar reality begins to dissolve around them. This 5D timeline shift isn't coming sometime in the distant future. It's happening now, in this very moment, and your awareness of it already places you at a critical decision point that most of humanity hasn't yet recognized. Think about it. Haven't you been feeling it? That subtle yet persistent knowing that something fundamental has changed in the fabric of your experience? Perhaps you've noticed time seeming to compress or expand in ways that defy conventional understanding. Maybe you've experienced moments where manifestation occurs almost instantaneously, where your thoughts crystallize into reality with startling speed. Or perhaps you felt an inexplicable sense of being pulled between two distinct realities, one dense and familiar, the other lighter and filled with limitless possibility. What you're experiencing is no coincidence, nor is it some psychological curiosity. Ancient wisdom traditions from the Mayans to the Vedic seers have long prophesied this precise evolutionary moment, a dimensional shift where humanity would be offered the opportunity to transcend the limited consciousness of third-dimensional reality and align with the higher frequencies of the fifth dimension. What these ancient wisdom keepers understood, knowledge that has been systematically suppressed by those who benefit from humanity's spiritual amnesia, is that dimensions aren't physical locations, but states of consciousness that operate according to entirely different universal laws. The prosperity I'm speaking of isn't merely about financial abundance, though that can certainly be an aspect of it. True 5D prosperity represents an entirely new relationship with the concept of abundance itself, where manifestation occurs through resonance rather than effort, where your energetic signature automatically attracts experiences that match your authentic vibrational state. But here's what's crucial to understand. This shift isn't happening uniformly for everyone. The timelines are splitting, and each soul is being magnetically drawn toward the dimensional experience that matches their conscious awareness. In the next few minutes, I'm going to share with you the specific energetic markers of this 5D shift that you may already be experiencing without fully recognizing their significance. More importantly, I'll reveal the practical consciousness technologies that allow you to intentionally align with the highest timeline of prosperity. Techniques that have been hidden from mainstream awareness because of their transformative power. This information has the potential to completely revolutionize how you navigate this critical transition period. If you're feeling a resonance with what I'm sharing, know that you've been guided to this message at precisely the right moment in your awakening journey. Take a moment now to join our community of conscious way showers by subscribing and activating the notification bell. Your engagement creates a powerful energetic field that helps others who are ready for this information to discover it in their own divine timing. Let's explore together what the ancient mystics and quantum physicists alike have discovered about navigating this monumental dimensional shift. The first thing you need to understand about this 5D timeline shift is that it represents a fundamental alteration in the frequency foundation of your reality. Most of humanity has been operating within a consciousness bandwidth that quantum physicists and spiritual adepts alike recognize as the third dimension, a vibrational field characterized by linear time, polarized experience, and the illusion of separation. What's been hidden from mainstream awareness is that this 3D framework was never meant to be humanity's permanent home, but rather a temporary classroom for soul evolution. What's occurring now is nothing less than the dissolution of the energetic barriers that have kept your consciousness tethered to this limited dimensional expression. The veils between dimensions are thinning, and many of you are experiencing what the ancient Egyptians called the awakening of the Ka body, your energetic blueprint that exists beyond the constraints of space-time. This awakening manifests as a profound inner knowing that you are not merely witnessing reality, you are actively generating it through the vibrational frequency you maintain. Consider the metaphor of a radio dial. For eons, humanity's collective consciousness has been locked into a specific frequency band, like a radio perpetually tuned to a single station. This frequency limitation wasn't accidental, but deliberately engineered to keep human potential contained within manageable parameters. Now imagine suddenly discovering that your consciousness can tune into entirely different stations, higher frequency bandwidths, where the very laws governing manifestation, time, and possibility operate according to entirely different principles. This is precisely what the 5D shift represents, a liberation from frequency confinement. Think of water in its different states: ice, liquid, and vapor. These states represent the same essence experiencing different vibrational states. Third-dimensional consciousness is like ice, solid, rigid, slow-moving, with clearly defined boundaries. Fifth-dimensional consciousness is more like water vapor, fluid, expansive, capable of permeating what appeared in lower dimensions to be solid barriers. Your consciousness isn't changing its essential nature during this shift. It's simply accelerating its vibrational state to express new properties and possibilities that were always inherent within you. This vibrational acceleration explains why so many of you are experiencing unprecedented physical and emotional symptoms during this transition, what shamanic traditions call the spiritual awakening sickness. Your biological system is literally recalibrating to sustain higher frequencies of consciousness. The exhaustion, unusual sleep patterns, heightened sensitivity, and spontaneous emotional releases aren't signs that something is wrong. They're evidence that your entire multidimensional system is upgrading its capacity to perceive and interact with expanded realms of reality. What practical difference does this make in your daily experience? In 3D consciousness, manifestation operates through linear cause and effect, often requiring significant time between intention and manifestation. In 5D consciousness, manifestation occurs through resonance. The external reality spontaneously reorganizes to reflect your internal vibrational state. This is why so many of you are noticing that your thoughts materialize with startling rapidity, both positively and negatively. The buffer zone between consciousness and experience is collapsing. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. What specific signs of this dimensional shift have you been experiencing in your own life? Your experiences aren't isolated phenomena, but part of a collective awakening pattern, and sharing them helps others recognize their own transition symptoms as meaningful rather than random. As this 5D shift accelerates, perhaps the most critical aspect you need to understand is the phenomenon of timeline bifurcation. Throughout human history, our collective and individual experiences have followed what quantum physicists might call a relatively coherent probability path. But what the ancient Hopi prophesied as the time of separation is now unfolding. A splitting of experiential timelines based on vibrational resonance. This isn't merely a metaphorical concept, but a literal divergence in the quantum field that determines which version of reality you personally experience. Many of you have already noticed this bifurcation manifesting in your relationships and social circles. Connections that once seemed solid and permanent suddenly dissolve without apparent cause, while unexpected new relationships form with striking synchronicity. This relationship restructuring isn't happening arbitrarily. It's a direct reflection of vibrational sorting, where consciousness is naturally gravitating toward resonant frequency matches. The discomfort many feel around this process stems from resistance to this natural reorganization. Imagine a vast river that has flowed as a single body of water for miles. Now picture this river approaching a massive stone formation that splits its flow into two distinct channels. One channel continues along a familiar terrain of density, limitation, and fear-based consciousness, the continuation of 3D experience. The other channel flows toward expanded possibility, synchronistic flow, and heart-centered connection, the emerging 5D reality. Every consciousness now approaching this divergence point must follow one channel or the other. There is no possibility of remaining at the fork indefinitely. The most empowering aspect of this bifurcation is that your destination isn't predetermined by external forces, but selected through your vibrational choices moment by moment. The channel your consciousness follows is determined not by what you claim to believe or what spiritual practices you perform, but by the actual energetic signature you emanate through your thoughts, emotions, and actions. This explains why some individuals with extensive spiritual knowledge still find themselves experiencing 3D limitations. Knowledge alone doesn't shift vibrational frequency. Embodiment does. What does this mean for your everyday reality? It means that prosperity in this transitional period isn't about forcing outcomes through willpower or strategic action. Rather, it's about making conscious, energetic choices that naturally align you with the 5D timeline, where abundance flows through synchronicity rather than struggle. Every time you choose love over fear, gratitude over complaint, or creative possibility over rigid certainty, you're not just making a philosophical choice. You're literally selecting which timeline fork your consciousness will follow. The practical application involves becoming exquisitely conscious of your energetic state throughout each day. When you notice yourself falling into patterns of judgment, scarcity thinking, or separation consciousness, recognize these as gravitational pulls toward the 3D timeline. Instead of judging yourself for these patterns, simply use them as awareness triggers to consciously realign with the qualities of 5D consciousness: unity awareness, heart-centered perception, and trust in the organic unfolding of divine timing. If you're resonating with this message, take a moment to support its reach by liking this video and subscribing to this channel. Your simple act of engagement helps ensure that others who are navigating this timeline bifurcation can find this information at precisely the moment their consciousness is ready to receive it. Together, we're creating an energetic grid that supports the collective awakening process during this unprecedented dimensional shift. The most misunderstood aspect of this dimensional shift involves its relationship to prosperity and abundance. In the fading 3D paradigm, prosperity has been defined almost exclusively through material acquisition, the accumulation of financial wealth, possessions, and status markers. What hasn't been widely understood is that this approach to abundance represents a fundamental misalignment with the universal laws of energy flow. This misalignment explains why so many have experienced the paradoxical combination of material wealth and inner scarcity, or alternatively, spiritual richness alongside material struggle. The 5D prosperity codes operate through a completely different quantum architecture. In this higher dimensional expression, abundance functions as a spontaneous emanation of your authentic frequency rather than a reward for strategic action or spiritual worthiness. This represents a profound inversion of conventional manifestation teachings. You don't need to become something different to experience prosperity. You need to vibrationally align with the truth that prosperity is your natural state when artificial frequency barriers are removed. Consider the relationship between the sun and its light. The sun doesn't need to employ techniques or strategies to shine. Radiance is its intrinsic nature. Any dimming of this light comes not from the sun's diminished capacity, but from clouds that temporarily obscure its brilliance. Your relationship to abundance in the 5D timeline operates through this same principle. Prosperity isn't something you achieve through effort, but something you allow through removing the frequency distortions that block your natural state of radiant abundance. These frequency distortions originated in what ancient mystery schools called the forgetting, humanity's descent into separation consciousness. During this epochal process, the collective field absorbed vibrational imprints of lack, limitation, and scarcity, what some traditions refer to as ancestral poverty programming. Now, these programs don't represent truth about the universe's abundant nature, but rather cultural and energetic conditioning that became self-perpetuating through collective belief. The most insidious aspect of this conditioning is that it operates primarily through subconscious frequency patterns rather than conscious beliefs. The practical transformation involves a radical shift in your relationship with manifestation itself. Rather than focusing your energy on external objectives, specific sums of money, particular possessions, or defined outcomes, 5D prosperity consciousness directs attention toward the felt experience of abundance in each present moment. This isn't spiritual bypassing of material needs, but recognition of the quantum principle that the external must conform to the internal when consciousness operates at higher dimensional frequencies. Begin by consciously dissolving the artificial separation between your spiritual practice and your relationship with material abundance. Each morning, spend time dwelling within the energetic signature of gratitude for the abundance already present in your experience. Feel, don't just intellectually acknowledge, the extraordinary abundance of breath, consciousness, natural beauty, and connection available in each moment. This vibrational practice isn't about denying material challenges, but about establishing the resonant frequency of abundance as your baseline state, despite temporary external conditions. As you maintain this resonance consistently, you'll begin noticing a fascinating shift in your manifestation patterns. Rather than experiencing prosperity through linear cause and effect pathways, abundance begins arriving through what quantum physicists call non-local causation. Synchronistic opportunities, unexpected connections, and spontaneous insights that bypass the usual time constraints of manifestation. This acceleration occurs because 5D consciousness operates beyond the limitations of space-time sequencing that governs 3D manifestation. What specific abundance blocks have you noticed dissolving in your own experience as you've aligned more with 5D consciousness? Share your insights in the comments below. Your experience may provide the exact key that another seeker needs for their own breakthrough in understanding this dimensional transition. What many spiritual teachers have failed to fully articulate is that this 5D timeline shift isn't merely a philosophical concept, it's a literal biological evolution occurring at the level of your DNA. The scientific community has long acknowledged that over 95% of human DNA has been labeled as junk DNA, genetic material with no apparent function. What hasn't been widely recognized is that this supposedly non-coding DNA actually contains the dormant blueprint for humanity's multidimensional capabilities. Abilities that are now being systematically reactivated through the heightened frequencies bathing our planet. These incoming light frequencies are triggering what ancient Essene texts described as the awakening of the divine human template, a restoration of genetic expressions that enable consciousness to perceive and interact across dimensional boundaries. The unusual physical symptoms many of you are experiencing, spontaneous vibrations in the body, electrical sensations along the spine, sudden temperature fluctuations, heightened sensitivity to foods and environments, aren't random maladies, but direct evidence of this DNA recalibration process as your biological system upgrades to accommodate expanded consciousness. Imagine your consciousness as a computer that has been running an outdated operating system with severe limitations on its processing capabilities. This 5D shift represents a comprehensive system upgrade that allows entirely new programs to run, programs that have always been installed but remained inactive due to previous energy constraints. Just as a computer might temporarily slow down or display unusual behaviors during a major software update, your biological system may exhibit temporary discomfort or disorientation as these dormant capacities come online. The Tibetan Buddhist traditions preserved knowledge of these awakening abilities in their teachings on siddhis, innate spiritual capacities that naturally emerge as consciousness expands. These include heightened intuition, telepathic communication, instantaneous manifestation, time fluidity, and direct knowing beyond intellectual analysis. What's critical to understand is that these aren't supernatural abilities, but natural functions of human consciousness when it operates at its intended frequency. The suppression of these capacities wasn't an evolutionary oversight, but a deliberate frequency limitation that's now being systematically dissolved. How can you consciously participate in this DNA activation process? The most direct approach involves recognizing that your attention itself is a powerful frequency director. When you consistently focus awareness on the emerging sensations of expanded perception, those moments of inexplicable knowing, spontaneous healing, or reality-bending synchronicity, you're essentially telling your biological system, yes, more of this. This conscious reinforcement accelerates the activation process by creating neural and energetic pathways that support these emerging capabilities. Equally important is releasing the subtle fear responses that can inadvertently suppress these activations. Many of you have been conditioned to distrust your extrasensory experiences, dismissing them as imagination, coincidence, or even symptoms of imbalance. This conditioning creates an internal frequency conflict that impedes the natural expansion process. Practice consciously choosing curiosity over fear when unusual perceptions or capabilities emerge. This shift from fear to fascination creates the internal safety necessary for these dormant abilities to fully awaken. Remember that this DNA activation process isn't separate from the prosperity alignment we discussed earlier. As these multidimensional capabilities come online, your manifestation abilities naturally accelerate because you're operating with a more complete spiritual technology system. The struggle-based manifestation of 3D consciousness gives way to the synchronistic flow of 5D reality as your internal systems upgrade to their original divine blueprint. If you're finding value in this exploration of our collective dimensional shift, please take a moment to subscribe and share this video with others who might be experiencing these awakening symptoms without understanding their profound significance. Your simple act of sharing could provide someone with the exact framework they need to navigate their own transition with greater ease and purpose. The most urgent question facing each awakening soul in this unprecedented transition is deceptively simple. How do I consciously secure my experience within the 5D timeline while the bifurcation accelerates? This isn't merely about intellectual understanding of these concepts, but about embodied practices that literally reconfigure your energetic signature to resonate with the higher dimensional frequency bands. What I'm about to share with you are integration technologies that many advanced spiritual traditions have preserved in fragmented form. Practices now being synthesized and restored to help humanity navigate this exact evolutionary moment. The first essential practice involves what quantum healers call timeline cleansing, the systematic identification and dissolution of subconscious loyalty to 3D patterns. Many of you remain unknowingly tethered to lower timeline experiences through energetic commitments made in moments of fear, trauma, or misunderstanding. These commitments manifest as subtle thought patterns like, "This is just how life works," or "Some things never change." While seemingly innocuous, these thought forms actually function as energetic anchors, securing your consciousness to the very timeline you're seeking to transcend. Imagine yourself as a hot air balloon naturally designed to rise into expanded states of consciousness. Each limiting belief, each fear-based assumption about reality functions as a subtle weight, keeping your balloon tethered to the ground. Timeline cleansing isn't about forcing your ascension through spiritual willpower, but about methodically identifying and releasing these weights, allowing your consciousness to naturally rise to its intended altitude. This process begins with radical honesty, the willingness to observe which aspects of your current experience you've subtly resigned yourself to as just the way things are. The ancient Hermetic traditions encoded this process in the principle, as above, so below, as within, so without. This axiom reveals the direct correspondence between your internal frequency state and your external reality experience. The most powerful timeline alignment practice involves consciously reorganizing your inner energy architecture through what some mystical traditions call future self-embodiment. Rather than relating to your 5D expression as a distant possibility you're working toward, you begin energetically inhabiting this consciousness as your present reality, speaking, thinking, and making choices from this already awakened state. This practice transcends mere visualization or affirmation because it operates directly at the level of energetic embodiment. Each morning upon waking, before your consciousness becomes entangled with 3D concerns, spend time feeling the distinct vibrational signature of your fully awakened self, the version of you already experiencing the prosperity, clarity, and multidimensional awareness of 5D consciousness. Notice the specific qualities of this energy, its expansiveness, its unshakable peace amidst external circumstances, its natural relationship with synchronistic flow. Then consciously choose to carry this energetic signature into your day, regardless of what appearances may suggest. Equally essential is the practice of quantum timeline jumping, the conscious use of pattern interruption to shift probability tracks. Whenever you notice yourself experiencing reality through familiar limitation patterns, use this awareness as a trigger to literally stop, physically change your position or environment, and consciously realign with the felt sense of 5D consciousness. This pattern interruption momentarily suspends the automatic momentum of your current timeline, creating what physicists call a bifurcation point, a moment of non-linear potential where consciousness can select an entirely different probability track. The final and perhaps most profound integration practice involves what mystical traditions call the sacred marriage of being and becoming. Indeed, many spiritual seekers create an artificial conflict between accepting the present moment completely and actively participating in evolutionary expansion. In 5D consciousness, this polarization dissolves. You simultaneously honor the perfection of your current expression while joyfully participating in its continuous unfoldment. This paradoxical capacity, holding both complete acceptance and dynamic evolution as complementary rather than contradictory, is perhaps the most distinctive marker of fifth-dimensional consciousness. As you implement these practices, you'll likely experience what feels like accelerated timeline compression, the simultaneous dissolution of outdated patterns, and the rapid emergence of resonant new possibilities. This compression often manifests as a period where both internal and external structures appear to be falling apart before the new coherence fully stabilizes. Trust that this dissolution is not a sign of failure, but precisely the evidence that you're successfully releasing the energetic architecture of the old timeline to fully embody the new. What we've explored together in these moments transcends mere spiritual theory or New Age philosophy. We're discussing the actual mechanics of the most significant consciousness transition humanity has experienced in thousands of years. The 5D timeline shift isn't a distant event we're waiting for. It's a present reality that each awakening soul is actively participating in through the frequency choices they make moment by moment. The timeline bifurcation we're experiencing represents nothing less than the divergence between two fundamentally different expressions of human potential. When we integrate these seemingly separate concepts, frequency foundation, timeline bifurcation, quantum prosperity, DNA activation, and conscious integration practices, a coherent picture emerges. Each aspect represents an essential facet of a single transformational process. The vibrational acceleration occurring at the planetary level is triggering the activation of dormant DNA sequences, which in turn enables perception of and alignment with the 5D timeline, which naturally reorganizes your experience of prosperity from struggle to synchronistic flow, all of which is stabilized through conscious integration practices that dissolve remaining ties to the old paradigm. What makes this period so extraordinary is the unprecedented level of conscious participation available to humanity. Throughout previous evolutionary transitions, these shifts occurred primarily at an unconscious level, with humanity adapting instinctively to changing energetic conditions. But this particular transition is designed specifically for conscious engagement, a collaborative creation between individual choice and cosmic momentum. This conscious participation explains why you've been drawn to this information at precisely this moment in your awakening journey. The intensifying challenges evident across global systems aren't signs of impending doom, but the necessary dissolution of structures built upon an outdated consciousness foundation. Just as a building constructed on sand must be dismantled before a new structure can be built on solid ground, many familiar systems must undergo deconstruction to make way for expressions that align with 5D principles of unity, transparency, and universal prosperity. This understanding transforms how you relate to apparent chaos, seeing through the surface disruption to recognize the higher reorganization underway. Perhaps most importantly, this transition isn't contingent upon everyone making the same choice. The 5D timeline doesn't require universal participation to become viable for those who consciously align with it. As quantum physics has demonstrated, consciousness creates reality through observation and expectation. The reality you experience reflects the frequency you consistently embody, not the collective average. This is why some individuals are already experiencing the abundant flow, synchronistic connections, and expanded perceptions characteristic of 5D consciousness while living alongside others still fully immersed in 3D limitation. The question before each soul in this pivotal moment isn't whether this dimensional shift is occurring. The evidence surrounds us in undeniable abundance for those with eyes to see. The question is, which expression of reality you will consciously align with as the timelines continue diverging? Will you remain tethered to familiar limitation through fear of the unknown? Or will you courageously release outdated certainties to embrace the expanded possibilities that 5D consciousness makes available? The practical choice involves whether you'll orient your attention primarily toward the dissolving structures of the old paradigm or the emerging foundations of the new Earth. Both exist simultaneously in this transitional period. The reality you experience as dominant depends entirely on where you consistently place your conscious focus and emotional investment. This doesn't mean ignoring challenges that require attention, but rather engaging them from the higher perspective that recognizes their role in the greater evolutionary process. The prosperity available on the 5D timeline isn't a reward for spiritual performance or the result of manifestation techniques. It's the natural expression of consciousness that has released artificial constraints and remembered its inherent creative nature. As you align with this remembering through the practices we've explored, you don't need to force prosperity into your experience. You simply stop energetically participating in the illusion of its absence. The abundance that follows emerges not as something new, but as the recognition of what has always been available when perception isn't clouded by frequency distortion. If you've resonated with this exploration of our collective evolutionary journey, I invite you to become an active participant in this consciousness community. Subscribe to this channel and activate notifications to join others who are consciously navigating this dimensional transition. Your engagement creates an energetic grid that supports not only your individual awakening, but the collective remembering, unfolding across humanity. Together, we're anchoring the frequency foundation for a new expression of human potential. Before we part ways in this moment, I encourage you to explore the video now appearing on your screen. Until we connect again, remember that the timeline you experience isn't determined by external circumstances, but by the frequency you choose to embody moment by moment. In every choice, in every thought, in every emotion, you're actively selecting which version of reality becomes your lived experience. Choose wisely, choose consciously, and know that your awakening ripples outward in ways more profound than you can possibly imagine.